In a chamber heavy with centuries of ritual and authority, King Charles unleashed a shockwave, sudden, unannounced, and merciless. He stripped Camilla of every official responsibility, and in the very next breath, placed the burden squarely on Catherine's shoulders. The sharp inhalations didn't stay confined within the palace. They reverberated through the entire royal machine. What could have provoked such a seismic shift? And why choose this moment? Before we descend into the truth behind this royal upheaval, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an unfolding revelation. The hush that followed was unlike any silence Windsor had ever witnessed. Courtiers stood paralyzed, faces twisted between horror and disbelief. No one dared shift. No one dared exhale. The king's voice had been unnervingly steady. Coming off his recent cancer ordeal, there was no room for persuasion, no chance of undoing his decree. For years, Camilla had maneuvered through royal life with precise confidence, her influence carefully stitched into the monarchy's public image. But in a single instant, that fabric was ripped open, threads falling away beneath the cold weight of the king's stare. It felt like collapse. Charles's message wasn't fueled by rage. It was far more chilling, measured, intentional, and heavy with a finality that left no doubt. Camilla's face revealed what no palace spokesperson ever would. For a fleeting second, her mouth parted as if to object, but the protest died before reaching the air. The judgment settling upon her felt heavier than the crown she once imagined she'd wear with certainty. For the first time, she didn't resemble a modern queen consort at all, but a woman blindsided by the very man she had trusted to stand immovably beside her. Across from her, Catherine remained still, her expression serene yet impenetrable. Not a flicker of gloating, not a spark of victory, just a solemn recognition of the moment's gravity. She had never sought this authority, yet fate placed it at her feet, and she handled it with the poise the situation demanded. Murmurs drifted through the room, soft as velvet yet cutting as steel. Aides traded anxious glances, suddenly unsure of where their loyalties belonged. Everyone present understood this wasn't a simple redistribution of tasks. This was a rupture of confidence, a reordering of the monarchy itself. Behind those gilded walls, centuries-old equilibrium was being rewritten in real time. It wasn't merely about responsibilities. It was about loyalty, legacy, and survival. The king's declaration was swift, but the strain behind it had been accumulating for years, buried beneath polished etiquette and practiced smiles. Charles's gaze swept slowly across the chamber, pausing ever so slightly on Catherine. It wasn't instruction, it was recognition. She understood, perhaps more deeply than anyone, the weight tied to such an ascent. Where Camilla had been bold and outspoken, Catherine wielded silence and restraint. Her quiet wasn't deference. It was strategy. Those who mistook her gentleness for weakness never realized her true strength lived in her ability to endure without breaking. Now that endurance had become her advantage. And as Catherine stepped out from those guarded walls, her breath tight and her posture steady, the outside world remained blissfully unaware of the upheaval that had just unfolded. The media kept churning out their usual palace theories. The public still clung to the fantasy of a harmonious royal household preparing for a new chapter at Windsor. But something irreversible had cracked open. The atmosphere felt altered now, denser, electrified, as if the monarchy's very core had shifted. Courtiers who once moved confidently behind locked doors now tread carefully, knowing that one wrong step could ignite scandal or expose deeply buried truths. Camilla remained seated long after the meeting dissolved, her thoughts fluttering in frantic circles like caged wings. Every previous conversation, every choice she had ever made, seemed to resound in her mind like accusations. There had been hints, fleeting signals that Charles's tolerance was fading, that Catherine's rising presence was no longer something he tried to conceal. By the time William and Catherine entered the room, the truth was already undeniable. Camilla had clung to the belief that her years beside Charles guaranteed protection from royal fallout. That illusion lay shattered now, leaving her suspended between shame and shock. Catherine, meanwhile, didn't walk away as a conqueror, but as the embodiment of change. The king's confidence weighed heavily on her, carried with both composure and unease. Despite her polished demeanor, she knew this shift would not stay hidden. The royal world breathed in murmurs, and murmurs often transformed into tempests. And though she had never aimed to unseat Camilla, she understood that perception would accomplish that for her and for their children. As the imposing palace doors shut behind her, the echo rolled through hallways that had witnessed centuries of betrayal, rebirth, and reinvention. What began as a subtle rearranging of duties was destined to erupt into a loyalty crisis unlike anything the modern monarchy had endured, Catherine remarked with a faint, knowing smile. The storm made no sound yet, but it had already taken shape beyond the marble thresholds, waiting for its cue. What the public didn't glimpse were the threads unraveling quietly for weeks. Secrets, fractures, and a deepening royal divide that had been edging toward detonation. Because this tension hadn't appeared overnight, months of hidden unrest had been simmering beneath polished smiles. Camilla and Catherine were locked in a conflict neither could afford to lose. This wasn't about jewels or ceremonial power. It was about influence, and only one woman would retain the king's unshakable trust. Behind iron gates, a quiet war raged. No heated arguments, no dramatic confrontations, but those fluent in power saw everything. It started with small maneuvers. Camilla sweeping past Catherine without acknowledgement at a formal event, or Catherine deliberately arriving 60 seconds before Camilla at a memorial where a rival order meant authority. These actions were never spoken of, but every one of them was executed with precision. Camilla's smiles grew strained. Catherine's elegance sharpened. At first, the tension looked trivial, almost childish, but soon the distance between them widened beyond what royal protocol could mask. The media, forever ravenous for conflict, began to watch closely. Yet surprisingly, it wasn't the tabloids that spotted it first, it was the respected outlets. Catherine, once dismissed as lovely but unremarkable, was suddenly profiled as poised, diplomatic, a queen-in-waiting already prepared. The contrast blazed brilliantly, especially to Camilla, who saw it not as flattery toward Catherine, but as a deliberate dismantling of her own standing. While Camilla appeared at events with a forced smile and a shrinking inner circle, Catherine's public image surged. Cameras caught her speaking confidently with global leaders, consoling the grieving, radiating a presence that exceeded royal routine. To outsiders, it felt effortless. To Camilla, it felt engineered, and perhaps it was. Catherine's steps were never loud, but always purposeful. Her chosen charities, her perfectly timed appearances, her sudden alignment with the beloved causes once championed by Queen Elizabeth, all of it felt calculated. Where Camilla had been brash, Catherine was methodical. Her quiet became her blade, her serenity a challenge in disguise. It wasn't vengeance, not overtly, but it was undeniably a statement. She would not be pushed aside. The palace, naturally, pretended nothing was wrong, but the walls absorbed every whisper. Aides close to each woman were drawn into the covert struggle, navigating veiled accusations and finally coded directives. Invitations began arriving without names. Calendars overlapped, at times suspiciously. At least one senior aide allegedly begged for a transfer after being caught between clashing loyalties that left them visibly rattled. No one dared voice it aloud, yet the truth settled like smoke through the palace. Two rival kingdoms had formed under one monarchy, and only one would withstand the fallout. Then the leaks began. Anonymous remarks hinting at frozen exchanges and silent competition. Some whispers drifted from Catherine's camp, others from Camilla's inner circle. But what shook the palace wasn't the claims, it was the precision. These weren't accidents. They were attacks. A battle in the shadows, fought with headlines instead of swords. A public relations Cold War waged through carefully timed narratives. Meanwhile, Charles maintained a facade of neutrality, but those closest to him sensed the tension in his stillness. Camilla, sensing her influence slipping, grew increasingly vocal behind closed doors. Private grievances, once kept far from a king, found their way to him. Every remark carried urgency and a tremor of fear. Charles, the consummate tactician, responded with restraint. No comfort. No scolding. His quiet wasn't indifference. It was strategy. He was observing the board, watching how each woman positioned her pieces in this royal duel. And while Camilla leaned on tradition, invoking her title and legacy, Catherine allowed public opinion to cast its own verdict. The queen consort might have held the official crown, but Catherine was fast becoming the nation's chosen successor. Still, the king stayed patient until a sealed dossier arrived, shifting him from watcher to judge. Wrapped in crimson wax, it contained an internal intelligence briefing outlining Camilla's covert maneuvers. What king? Charles discovered that night confirmed what he had been afraid to believe. His queen wasn't simply faltering, she was undermining the monarchy's future from within. The report had been delivered by a trusted aide known for loyalty, not ambition. It wasn't a casual update. Inside lay a thick compilation, gathered discreetly over months, mapping behaviors the king had chalked up to gossip. But here, in documents and testimony, were the truths he could no longer dismiss. At the top, a detailed list of Camilla disrupting key diplomatic operations. Catherine's planned appearances at Commonwealth gatherings had been abruptly erased, replaced by Camilla's engagements without explanation. This wasn't coincidence. These moves were intentional obstacles meant to block Catherine's ascent on the global stage. Even more damning were the transcripts, emails, private messages, monitored calls, hinting that Camilla had maintained communication with media figures infamous for manufacturing scandal. While palace staff labored to present unity, she was allegedly feeding selective narratives, subtly tarnishing Catherine's credibility while shielding herself. It wasn't overt defamation, but the manipulation was unmistakable. Charles had always recognized his wife's political instincts, but this crossed into dangerous territory. It was covert warfare carried out in rumors and carefully planted stories. Buried within the evidence was a confidential memo from a Commonwealth diplomat sharply critical of Camilla's conduct during a private meeting in Nairobi. The language was polite, but the irritation was unmistakable. She had ignored etiquette, spoken over delegates, and reportedly dismissed Catherine's contributions as mere decoration. Other officials echoed the sentiment. To them, Catherine represented progress, a modern link between cultures and generations. Camilla, meanwhile, was perceived as gripping a title that held little resonance beyond British soil. Then came the internal testimonies, anonymous but unmistakably credible. Staff recounting moments where the Queen consort bypassed traditional channels to manipulate schedules or whispered heated remarks about keeping Catherine in line. One aide claimed Camilla had labeled Catherine the true danger in a moment of unfiltered rage. These weren't tabloids or outsiders. These were the gears of the monarchy itself, speaking from within. Their accounts sketched a deliberate pattern of sabotage, no longer explainable as mere tension. But the most heartbreaking piece emerged near the end, a personal letter from William. It wasn't formally addressed to the king, yet it was slipped in with silent approval. In it, William defended his wife not as a royal figurehead, but as a woman bearing the strain of duty with breaking point grace. He wrote of the weight she carried alone, the hidden tears, the steady smile she forced on days she felt abandoned within her own institution. He didn't demand retribution. He simply asked for recognition. And beneath that plea, scrawled in Charles's unmistakable handwriting, was one chilling line. This cannot go on. The choice ahead was devastating. The consequences were colossal, but the evidence was undeniable. The Queen consort had crossed a boundary, and in doing so, jeopardized not only his daughter-in-law's integrity, but the stability of the crown itself. This wasn't about preference anymore. It was survival. For a long moment, Charles reached for his pen. And the report before him wasn't just documentation. It was the last straw. With a shaking hand, the king made a decision that would reshape the monarchy for generations. No palace statement followed. No grand decree. Still, those who studied the royals sensed the quake instantly. Camilla's abrupt absence from two major public events and Catherine's sudden solo appearances blasted through the silence the palace refused to break. In a realm built on spectacle, vanishing speaks louder than presence. When Camilla's name quietly disappeared from schedules tied to historic occasions, it wasn't an accident. It was a message. One day, she was confirmed as host for a major charity gala. The next, her title evaporated. No replacement. No justificación. Only an empty space where she once stood. Within hours, whispers became theories, and theories became wildfire. By the time Catherine stepped into the spotlight, Camilla had vacated, dressed in composed elegance beneath a storm of cameras. The world had assembled its own explanation. Inside the press areas, quiet warnings circulated. No direct questions. No Camilla references. The silence itself felt orchestral. This wasn't routine scheduling chaos. This was a recalibration, a silent reshuffling of power, and the lenses captured every permissible frame. Catherine standing alone, not accompanied, not overshadowed, but positioned unmistakably at the center, as though the role had always belonged to her. And the unraveling didn't stop there. Days later, the public witnessed the moment that ignited the global frenzy at a ceremonial procession in Windsor. Charles and Camilla appeared together, as tradition dictated, but it was the king's movements that betrayed everything. Once in perfect step, he now advanced ahead of her, 3 paces forward, startlingly distant. A breach of protocol, so stark it was impossible to ignore. Camilla, normally poised and radiant, looked shaken, gripping decorum like a lifeline. Analysts spun theories instantly. Was this symbolic? Intentional? A quiet restructuring unfolding in real time. Commentators dissected every second. Newspapers ran parallel images of past unity and present distance, highlighting the shift. The Camilla of last month had been positioned at the center. The Camilla of this week hovered at the edge. Meanwhile, Catherine's ascent was calculated, almost surgical. High-level engagements once assigned to senior queens were now hers alone, each one strengthening her presence, soft-spoken but undeniable. It felt as if the institution was testing the future without announcing it. Traditional media walked carefully. Social media did not. To the online world, this was a full-blown series unfolding episode by episode. Every photograph became symbolic. Every gesture became storyline. A stiff glance became betrayal. A missing accessory, a lingering stare, a clipped greeting. Nothing escaped suspicion. The hashtag, #WhereIsCamilla exploded. Fan accounts morphed into detectives. Every blink, every breath, every silence became evidence, fueling a narrative that no palace denial could have stopped. Not that any denial came. The palace stayed impenetrable. No comments, no clarifications, no rebuttals, only a steady, deliberate shift in the roles displayed to the public. The monarchy has always evolved in silence long before it speaks. And now that silence roared. Camilla had not been dismissed, at least not publicly. But her influence was evaporating moment by moment, replaced by a younger, steadier figure the public was already embracing as the inevitable future. Yet behind royal walls, Camilla was unraveling, while Catherine, for the first time in her life, was being prepped for a role no one had anticipated this soon. Sources within Clarence's house described it as a complete emotional collapse. Camilla, blindsided and humiliated, reportedly confronted Charles in an outburst of raw grief and fury that left their private suite steeped in silence and tears. The confrontation wasn't orchestrated. It was unavoidable. Camilla had endured the public erosion of her position, clinging to the hope it was temporary, a momentary storm. But once she received indisputable confirmation, final and irreversible, something inside her shattered. She didn't request an audience with Charles. She stormed into it. Entering the private rooms where they had once exchanged whispered promises of loyalty and destiny, Camilla arrived not as a queen fighting for a crown, but as a woman betrayed by the one man she believed would never forsake her. Her voice, usually steady and refined, was fractured and trembling. She didn't hide her agony. She unleashed it. Words tumbled out, sharp, frantic, disbelieving. She spoke of devotion, of years spent enduring scorn, criticism, and a spotlight that never softened. She reminded him of what she had sacrificed, of the patience she'd shown, of the battles she'd fought quietly just to remain at his side. And then, trembling with wounded rage, she demanded to know why he had surrendered her legacy to the one woman she feared most, Catherine. The name hovered between them, like smoke. And Charles, unmoved beneath the storm, spoke for words that struck like a blade. It's already been done. His voice carried no gentleness, no hesitation. Just finality, cold, immovable. It wasn't anger that defined Charles in that moment. It was iron resolve. He had acted not as a husband, but as a king. And to him, the future of the monarchy outweighed the heartbreak of the present. Camilla saw it then. Not just the stripping away of her duties, but the quiet erasure of her place beside him in the way it once mattered. And as she stood trembling in the room they once shared, memories of Diana rose like a wave. Years spent clawing her way toward a throne haunted by a legend. And now the cycle had turned again. Only this time, her opponent wasn't a princess from the past. It was a future queen who had already claimed the ground beneath her feet. Servants had been ordered that morning to clear the corridors of unnecessary eyes. They were told to vanish, to avoid staring, to leave a hollow silence behind them. The palace had anticipated the eruption. And though the confrontation ricocheted through the private halls, no one dared intervene. It was an unyielding, blunt, unsoftened, who finally stepped in, not with comfort but with truth. She reminded Camilla that dignity must be guarded, that withdrawal wasn't defeat, but self-preservation. And it wasn't tenderness. It was a rope thrown in the dark. In the days that followed, Camilla vanished from sight. No formal leave, no explanation, just a void. Her aides declined her obligations with polite formality. Her phone went dark. For a woman who once commanded influence simply by being present, her disappearance now thundered louder than any speech. The queen consort remained queen only on paper. In every living sense, her reign had already slipped away. Behind the guarded walls of Clarence House, Camilla mourned not merely the loss of a title, but the rewriting of an entire legacy without her blessing. And while she grieved the sudden collapse of power, Catherine was being ushered into her first true trial. She hadn't sought it, but when the moment arrived, Catherine stepped forward with steady precision. In that instant, she wasn't occupying a vacancy. She was being forged into something far greater, the emerging face of the monarchy's future. The earliest signals of the shift were subtle but unmistakable. Patronages once linked to Camilla were quietly reassigned. No ceremonies, no announcements, only soft edits on official schedules. Catherine began appearing wherever Camilla once led, and she carried herself not with spectacle, but with intention. Her style wasn't loud. It was refined, measured, anchored in duty. Within weeks, she had taken on the weight of a queen consort without ever speaking the title aloud. It felt as if the crown itself had placed the torch in her hands without ceremony, because the world already saw it blazing there. Behind palace curtains, preparations intensified. Catherine was no longer just a senior royal. She was being shaped for sovereignty in everything but name. Meetings once reserved for the king's innermost circle now included her. Senior diplomats briefed her on global strategy. High-level correspondence provided insight, and she was guided through the labyrinth of international protocol. Former aides who had served Queen Elizabeth returned to counsel her, passing down decades of quiet wisdom. Catherine absorbed every word. But when she finally spoke, her voice revealed a woman acutely aware of the magnitude of what she was stepping into. Then came the visit to the War Memorial, a place bound to generations of queen consorts as guardians of collective memory. Catherine arrived without spectacle, yet her presence rippled far beyond the moment. What had once been routine now felt like a signal. Observers noted the solemn grace with which she honored the tradition, not as performance, but as promise. A new era was being etched into history, and she had stepped onto its first line. Through it all, William remained steady at her side, not as a prince exerting dominance, but as a husband offering unwavering support. His silence carried more gravity than any public statement. His faith in Catherine's ascent was complete. He didn't need to justify her. She was proving herself with each deliberate step. And while the shifting power dynamics fractured parts of the family, they also forged unlikely bonds. Princess, and never one to indulge emotion, began to show quiet signs of alliance. Her approval wasn't spoken, but lived in exchanged glances, restrained nods, and the absence of objection. From a woman like, and that was the highest endorsement one could receive. The defining moment came behind closed doors in a chamber stripped of cameras and ceremony, where Catherine received her first direct state briefing from King Charles. No applause, no witnesses, only the weight of centuries pressing down on them. In that room, she was not a daughter-in-law, nor a placeholder for someone displaced. She was the one the monarchy had chosen to trust. Their eyes met across the table, steady and unflinching, and in that silence, an understanding passed between them. The transition had begun, but the transformation was far from over. The final act would unfold not in shadows, but under every lens, in full view of the world. Camilla and Catherine, side by side, draped in ceremony and frost, embodied a quiet reversal of power. Weeks of absence had hollowed Camilla's public presence, her name fading, her appearances ghosted from official schedules. Yet, by what insiders whispered was a direct royal decree, she was summoned back for a state ceremony long expected to honor her. The moment she stepped from the car, the message was clear. Her smile wavered. Her posture, usually effortless, was taut. Her spotlight had been quietly stolen. Moments later, Catherine arrived, and though the difference was subtle, it was thunderous. Cameras lingered longer. Applause swelled imperceptibly. Even the choreography of security placed Catherine at the center. Then came the signal no one could misread. Catherine seated herself not with the minor royals, but in the place long reserved for the queen consort. No mistake, no oversight. It was a message carved in protocol. Analysts erupted online. A silent coup. A repositioning without words. Camilla's jaw clenched, her gaze glued to the floor. Catherine, serene and poised, radiated composure, not triumph. Every photograph captured the story. One woman receding, another ascending. Charles spoke briefly, his words measured, evoking renewal and duty, but never naming names. The context, however, could not be ignored. Catherine stared straight ahead. Camilla cast fleeting glances sideways. The tension that had simmered in palace corridors now played out under chandeliers, public yet private, civil yet final. Headlines erupted overnight. Catherine rises as Camilla fades. International press framed it as the most symbolic shift since Diana first stole the throne's attention. But where Diana's rise had been fiery, Catherine's was surgical, silent, precise, unavoidable. It wasn't a battle, it was an eclipse. Behind the glittering pageantry, the damage was done. Reconciliation, once possible, had vanished. The monarchy drew its line not by decree, but through placement, posture, and the invisible calculus of visibility. Camilla had not been dethroned by scandal or vote. She had been replaced by relevance, by favor, and by the inevitability of a future no longer built around her. Camilla had been quietly replaced, not by scandal, not by decree, but by relevance, favor, and a royal future no longer built around her. Yet the real shift in power was still unfolding in whispers, in hidden alliances, and in a single, damning act waiting to be unleashed. In the quiet of the early hours, by candlelight, she wrote a letter never meant to be seen until now. They are ready. Its words shook the foundations of the royal family, exposing wounds the crown had long tried to bury. It began as a private catharsis, a stream of unfiltered truth from a woman who no longer recognized her place in the world she had once fought so fiercely to command. The ink trembled in places, the handwriting uneven, betraying emotions long kept beneath the surface. Camilla laid bare what cameras never caught, her anguish, her disillusionment, her simmering sense of betrayal. She admitted to mistakes, but threaded through every line was a bitterness sharpened by history. She wrote of loyalty to William, of the sacrifices she had made, and the crushing realization of how swiftly she had been discarded when her image no longer fit the palace narrative. Diana's shadow lingered as it always had. And now, Catherine had become the second shadow she could not escape. The parallels were impossible to ignore. Just as Diana had captivated the world, now Catherine commanded it. Camilla cast herself as the survivor, the reminder of a monarchy forced to reinvent itself. She questioned whether she had ever been accepted at all, or merely tolerated until someone more palatable arrived. And woven into her sorrow were chilling hints of betrayal. A senior aide, once loyal, allegedly funneled private details to Catherine's team, strategies, talking points, advanced knowledge of Camilla's engagements. The sense of conspiracy pulsed from the page, a quiet fury amplified by realization. She had not only been outmaneuvered, but perhaps outwitted with intent. The final line cut deeper than any headline. I was queen in name only. It was not resignation. It was an obituary, an admission, an indictment. Though she had worn the crown, she had never truly been allowed to wield it. How the letter reached the press remains a mystery. It landed in the inbox of a respected royal correspondent, unsigned, authenticated by unmistakable handwriting. Within hours, it was front-page news across Europe and the Commonwealth. Analysts dissected its tone. Commentators debated its intent. Was it revenge, a desperate cry, or a calculated blow from someone within the royal machinery? Charles offered no comment. Catherine remained silent. The palace scrambled to deflect, but the damage was irreversible. Camilla's pain was no longer whispered behind palace walls. It was printed, archived, and etched into public consciousness. Yet even as headlines calmed, one truth was clear. This was not the end, but the beginning of a new royal struggle. Camilla retained her title, but power no longer answered to her name. Catherine carried the weight of official duties, stepping fully into the role the monarchy had silently handed her. A new era had begun, but at a cost few were willing to measure. Within Buckingham and Windsor, a silent divide deepened. No arguments, no visible fractures, just an unspoken distance those closest could no longer ignore. Charles, ever guardian of the institution, had thrown his weight behind the future. Camilla moved through the palace like a relic of a chapter hastily closed. Public appearances grew shorter, private meetings dwindled. What had once been a united front now felt like two monarchs occupying the same stage with entirely different scripts. And through it all, Catherine's shadow lengthened. Diplomats noticed. Ambassadors whispered. In private corridors and closed-door summits, the question was no longer about the Queen Consort, but about the Princess of Wales. Catherine now greeted world leaders with assured fluency. Her calendar was requested first. Her name, once spoken only as a future possibility, was now referenced in the present tense. Behind velvet curtains, discussions shifted. The monarchy's public image was no longer defined by title. It was defined by presence, influence, and inevitability. It's about resonance. And Catherine's image resonates like no one else's. William remains her silent pillar. His support has never wavered, yet even those closest acknowledge the shift in their dynamic. With Catherine's role expanding rapidly, the demands on their marriage have intensified. They are no longer just partners in life, they are partners in legacy. He carries the burden of lineage. She now shoulders the mantle of expectation. Together, they are being forged into the monarchy's next embodiment. But at what cost to the intimacy that once defined them? Speculation has reached a fever pitch. Pundits and palace watchers whisper of abdication. Not tomorrow, perhaps not even next year, but the machinery is moving. Charles, in his twilight, may be quietly laying the groundwork for ceremonial exit, one that allows the crown to pass to a new generation before crisis forces it. And Catherine, already performing in every sense but title, may soon find herself confronting the weight of a crown she never asked for, but can no longer avoid. The monarchy holds its breath. For all its tradition, it is still a house built on perception, and perception has already crowned Catherine in the court of public opinion. Yet within that rise lies a quiet warning. Power in the House of Windsor has always come with a price. The same adoration that elevates one figure can shatter another. And though Camilla's fall may feel complete, history shows that the monarchy's chessboard never stops shifting. In the House of Windsor, nothing is ever truly final. Today's triumph may define tomorrow's downfall. One woman's rise is another's reckoning. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.